I felt like a thriving artist the first time I sold a painting. I felt like a thriving artist. I felt like a thriving artist the first time that I nailed a likeness. I felt like a thriving artist. Whenever I imagined a painting and painted it exactly the way it was in my imagination, you know, there's little things that can make you feel like you're killing it, if you get a compliment from the right person, it can feel amazing. Part parts of the conversation that we've had, over this past hour, it's like art can serve multiple duties. So it can, you can be a thriving artist just painting for yourself and feeling better at the end of it,
Yeah.
like that could be enough. But I think, if you're constantly inspired to create, then you are thriving. There's a lot of different ways to get there. But if you're constantly inspired to create, then you're doing something right.
Forking a road between thriving and starving artists is where I'm at. I really like your work. I can't eat lights. I need new heights. Just want to make a living doing the work I love. Throw the notion of a starving artist out of the window. Take the elevator down to the ground floor and jump on it some more.
Hello and welcome to Fork in the Road. Today we have Jason Sanders, aka Drained Eye. He's an artist who has his work in many kind of fields, from physical artwork to NFTs to clothing. He's from Philadelphia. And welcome, Jason. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing great. How are you?
Very good, thank you. I'm fascinated about how your creative journey, where you've gotten to where you are now. Where did it all start for you?
Well, I think I was always creative, but I started, whenever I turned 40, I sort of had this epiphany that if I was going to do what I wanted to do, it was like time to start. And a lot of things were happening in my life at that time, but I sort of realized that I had a creative voice and, that I had something to say, and that really motivated me. So I think that was around 2016, 2017, whenever I really started working with ambition to be a full-time artist.
Yeah, right. And what was can you remember the first time you sold a piece of artwork?
Yeah, I remember selling a painting. It was early on. I really didn't consider myself an artist at that point. I knew I had some abilities, but I had made a painting of sort of like this girl with like these ghost attributes, and her friend really liked it, and he paid me $50 for it. Ecstatic that someone liked my work.
Yeah, cool. And for the listeners and viewers out there, how would you describe your style of artwork?
I would describe it as like surreal expressionist, something like that. I didn't go to art school, so I don't have a lot of the art history that other artists have. I just kind of go with what feels right. It's, it's really been sort of a journey of expression and self-discovery to be where I am now, and that's carried through like a lot of different things. Whenever I first started out, it was very important to me to be able to nail likenesses and be able to conceptualize something and execute that vision. And over time, the things that that I'm interested in have evolved, but it's just like this journey that's been beautiful and is still unfolding.
Yeah. Are there any other artists that you kind of inspired you in terms of your style or work ethic or business ethic?
Well, I mean, I have so many friends that are amazing artists and just great mentors. Ali Sabet, that was on your show several weeks back, is one. But as far as, I guess my favorite popular artist is Matisse, and I really like sort of the graphic elements to his pieces. And for a long time, like all of my work had that graphic quality to it. And that's something that, just visually hits for me.
Yeah. And the skull motif that is through your work. How long has the skull been part of your work? Has that always been there, or is it something that came about at a certain stage?
It's not always been there. Really, I loved painting people. That's what really motivated me to paint initially. And, I would paint portraits of celebrities, a lot of kind of what would be qualified as fan art. But the people that I admired weren't the biggest celebrities. They were the people that were kind of bringing this self consciousness to their craft. And I admired that about them. And so I found it really hard to place those paintings because someone would have to have a very similar outlook to me in order to want to collect those. After a year or so of like really pursuing that, someone, said you should try to make something more generic. And I did my first skull pieces at that point. And then it really took off for me whenever I got into NFTs, because at that point I didn't want to mint anyone's likeness without their permission. And so I just kind of switched over and started doing skulls exclusively. And, whenever you paint something over and over and over, there's like this meditative thing that happens, and a lot of experimentation just naturally occurs. And so I ended up, kind of developing my own style and my own just visual identity. All of these pieces that are core to my iconography now were developed out of the 2 or 3 years of just really focusing on the skull and all the pieces of it. And in that process, I was also going through, a pretty deep and healing journey of sort of inner work and discovering more about myself and sort of just looking inward, and all of that is reflected in the pieces that I make.
Yeah. Yeah. You find that that it's good for your mental health in a way. It sounds like it is, in terms of being able to just get in that flow state of creating the art.
Yeah, yeah, it's good for my mental health, but then, you know, um, I think it's also about just understanding. I feel like I'm called to be an artist, and that really kind of flowered whenever I took the time to think about what it means to be called to do something and what the purpose in doing that might be. And so, a lot of themes and this journey of self-discovery, they're personal, but we're all humans. We're all on different levels going through our own journey of self-discovery, and it unplays for everyone differently. It unfolds for everyone differently, but we're all doing it. And so in that way, I'm hopeful that something in my work will resonate with people who see it. And so far, that's been the case.
Yeah. And with your skull work, that kind of coincided around the time of NFTs. Do you find that um, the nature of NFTs is a lot of it's based around output? You're putting out a lot of stuff on a regular basis, and you
Yeah.
find that helped you by having one foot in the familiar with the skull illustration, and then the other foot could then branch into and experiment with all these different things. Do you find that that's kind of how that worked for you?
Yeah, well, I feel like an essential part of being successful, one of the millions of pieces, is sort of mastering production, and being able to crank things out at a good clip. And NFTs definitely helped in jumpstarting that for me. Digital art helped in jumpstarting for me, being able to iterate things very quickly, understanding color theory and layers in a different way than you would with traditional media. And so, yeah, it just, it's funny because it's like we're always where we need to be, even though, sometimes it feels like in the moment you're having FOMO about what you're not able to accomplish, but in reality, you're always where you need to be. And definitely NFTs brought some key things into my art practice. Like you
Yeah.
said, production and just that iterative, quality of banging things out. But
Yeah,
I
it's
also,
that in.
art, and I love animating and the extra levels of storytelling that you're able to get by adding just, a few frames of variation,
Yeah. Yeah. Can you tell me a bit about how what your digital art setup is, what you're using, and and if you're at all blending your physical with the digital, or are you just working in the digital space, your digital work? How are you
Yeah.
working that in
Um,
with your work?
my digital art, I work on an iPad, so I just have Procreate, and that's been really intuitive for me, especially once you find brushes that are familiar. The mark making is familiar to what you're used to, with a physical tool. But, NFTs can be anything. I've minted photographs, digital collage, there's all kinds of elements that are really interesting in digital art. And the digital art journey led me into the streetwear side of things and fashion and design that, I kind of set a place marker for myself, but being active in in digital creation allowed me to get there, sooner than I thought of.
Yeah, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
With your so with your business side of things, whereabouts did you start your business? What did you start selling, and how did you go about getting yourself out into a marketable space where your work could be purchased?
I don't know that my journey is like anything that I would recommend people to copy. The main thing that my ethos has always been give them something to believe in. And since I started late and I didn't have the connections, I focused on making the best work that I could make and presenting it in the best way possible. And, I'm the kind of person that, whenever I was thinking about how this could work out for me, I didn't want to limit the universe's options. So instead of just building the vehicle, I decided that I was going to build the vehicle and pave the road. And it wasn't just going to be a single lane road, it was going to be a highway. And, I wanted to set all of these lanes in order so that as I continue to build, that there would be obvious paths where the universe could meet me and allow for me to sort of kick things off. I didn't know how things were going to happen. My first ventures into selling things was like at punk rock flea markets where I would sell prints with so success. But it doesn't really matter how you start, it's just starting, because making the work and selling the work are two completely different things. And there's so much that goes into understanding what someone is looking for and how people communicate when they're considering things. It's just a skill that a muscle that gets trained over time.
Yeah, yeah. And it's cool that you're saying you're a self-taught artist and you started late, and
Yeah.
also, but recently I noticed that you got accepted into the Rio Art Residency. Can you tell me a bit about what that experience was like?
Oh, that was amazing. I almost didn't go because at that point I was like unsure financially if it was a good move, like just taking the time and the cost of the travel and all of that. But I'm so glad I did, because it was the first time that I had ever been out of the continental United States, to another country. It was the first stamp on my passport, and Rio is just so beautiful. The scenery there, the people there, the residency itself, it just set us up for so much success. We had everything that we needed to create. There was a great group of artists, and so many of them I was familiar with from the NFT space, but there were also probably 5 or 6 that I had never met before. And so the combination of sort of getting out of your comfort zone, but then also, being at ease with people that it was just a beautiful experience for me.
Yeah, and for I don't know, I suppose all residencies are different, but what did you have to kind of like pay for yourself in terms of like you had to get yourself there and things like that?
Yeah, it was basically travel, and even some of the travel was subsidized. So that wasn't clear whenever I was making the decision to go or not, But once we were there, we were completely taken care of. and it was just basically like missing out on work. At that point, I was still working. Let's see, whenever I came back from Rio, that was actually the end of me holding down a separate job, because whenever I came back, my job wasn't there. Yeah. It was just amazing to be there, and it sort of gave me this confidence and this boost and vigor to come back and just be like, I'm going in, like, now is the time. I'm just going for it.
Yeah. So it's something that you definitely recommend to other artists doing
Yeah,
a residency, being in that space. How long was it for?
it was only a week, so
Yeah.
it went very quickly. And I called a friend that has done residencies before, and I asked him for some advice, like what he would recommend, and he gave me some really solid advice of just trying things that you haven't tried before and working out emotional themes that are playing out in your life right now. Not worrying about anything else. Like, it doesn't matter because you're in another place. This is a time to experiment. And for a large part, that's what I did. I had a vision of a type of piece that I wanted to make, and I made that there, along with a bunch of other pieces, a bunch of collaborative pieces as well. And whenever I came back, I animated my big piece that I had done, and I was able to participate on Super Rare for the first time, and got my first Super Rare collector after that. So it was just a really cool experience.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that I don't think artists get a lot of opportunity to just like completely immerse themselves in their art. Like with a lot of people, it's either like family life or other jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I think it's just such would be an amazing opportunity just to like be selfish for a part of your life and just go, I'm gonna just do my art, just focus on my art. That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we hit so hard, like the group that was there for that first class, the 2024 class, like as soon as the art supplies arrived, we started painting, and only having a week. I'm glad that I started early, because the way that they set up the week, it was sort of like rear loaded with activity. So as time went on, we went and saw Christ the Redeemer later in the week. We went to the beach and did a mural later in the week. The majority of my productivity was in the first couple of days.
Just a quick intermission to say that the Fork in the Road podcast has a Patreon as well, where you get a whole bunch of special things. You get an extended hour-long advert-free things, like you get to ask the podcast guests questions. You get a blog where I deep dive things which, might help make you successful and me successful, because I'm learning along the way too. You can also chat with me one-on-one and talk about your art business and make it work together. Back to the interview.
So many amazing artists on Instagram, for instance, but the artist themselves hides behind the work. Like you see this amazing work. You might even see a time lapse of them drawing. So a person's doing it, but you
Right.
don't know anything about the person themselves. And I think they're really missing out on, because is a language, and to be able to put a face to the person who's kind of talking to you, I think is a very important thing and an important connection in the art.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think the zines are definitely like really cool. And one thing that I'm trying to do as well with promotion is like, not just an email list. I want to go really old school and get postal addresses of collectors and what have you, and just like randomly write them a letter, write them a postcard, say, this is what I'm up to. I hope you're having a great life, whatever.
Yeah.
And just because that, when you put something in the mail, you pretty much definitely they're going to get it. It's not going to get buried in something like that. And
Right.
if it's something that they can put on their fridge or whatever.
Of writing a zine, you also have a digital version of that, and that digital version is currency that can be traded for an email address or something like that.
Yeah. With the NFT space, are you still doing much in the NFT space? I know that's how I met you on Revel, which is now defunct and
Yeah.
all that beautiful work is gone. But so where are you now in the NFT space?
The last thing I minted was part of a group drop for the One Love Art DAO, the Agape collection. And it was like the first time that I had made something with Procreate Dreams. And so it was like this cute little animated sequence. And I've been focusing on creating generative projects. So I have one that's completely done, that I'm so in love with, but I just don't feel like it's the right time. Like, I made so many cool parts to it that it would be kind of heartbreaking to only have 100 or 500, versions minted. I would really love to
Hmm.
have a bigger collection so that
Hmm.
more of the elements can get mixed and remixed.
Hmm.
Because before I ever done anything generative, everything was just like individually drawn artworks.
Hmm.
So it was really neat to make that, and I learned so much. And then it's like these processes, doing that, it sort of like added two or three different elements to my my visual. I don't know. I just spaced on the word, but
Mm.
my visual identity, it picked up like
Yeah.
extra pieces through that process. So I
Mm.
have I'm looking at my board. It's been up for, I don't know, probably at least 6 months. So I have 6 collections that are, planned, and out of those I've made one. But I have so many ideas. I'm just sort of
Mm.
approaching them as I have time. It's funny what feels natural, and what calls to you. Maybe I just go with it. Part of me thinks like, oh, I should be like more focused, but I found that I'm just kind of guided to be where I'm supposed to be, where I'm supposed to be. So if it feels
Mm.
good, I do it. If I'm looking at this and I haven't done it in 6 months, I'm just assuming it's not the right time. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm. And
But
and by Janet, so
what's
by
that?
Janet, so that means you're working with AI to create different versions of your work, or how do you mean generative?
No, it means that you break down different elements. Like for the skulls, I did a collection that's skulls, and starting from the background, um, all the way forward, there I have maybe 20 different layers. Some of it is background, some of it is, then there's the shape of the skull, then there's different elements like eyes, what goes in the eyes, the mouth, just all the individual pieces, the details are drawn separately, and
Yeah.
then you use a computer to shuffle the deck and compile them.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah. That's
it's
cool.
not AI, but it's not like you're sitting drawing individual ones. You're going to be surprised by the combinations that come out of
Yeah.
versions of things.
Yeah. Yeah. You're using the digital technology of, is it in Procreate you're doing that? Doing all the
Yeah.
different layers? So yeah. 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 That's really cool. When I was sorry when I was doing NFTs, and I just first started. Well, I've still got a drawing of, instead of skulls, I've got a bat head, the hypnobat with hypnotic eyes, and it's one of those things I use to track my journey as an artist, because like I use that same drawing, but I include all the elements from my new drawings into that drawing as I progress through my journey and my styles. So the hypnobat evolves as I evolve as an artist, using elements of what I've got at that particular time. So yeah, I think it's a really good way of experimenting with styles and really opening your mind to what your work can be and finding your style. Yeah. Yeah. What
Yeah,
what, what tips would you give to artists who, like, I know it's one of those big things where artists feel lost trying to find their style. And for someone like you who's got a very distinctive style, what would you suggest and how people go about that?
I would suggest taking the thing that you love to draw the most and just draw it as many times as you can, or paint it as many times as you can. Make different versions of a painting. Like a lot of times, whenever earlier in my career, I would paint something and it wouldn't quite be right, and I would just be like, do it again. Like, do it again. And something else will be wrong about it. And then put those two next to one another and, just do it over and over and over and lean into the things that you like, like that's where your style is the things that you like, the way that you do things, even the mistakes that you make. Sometimes you might see something as a mistake, but it's your way of doing something. Not everything has to be technically perfect, So, yeah, I would just say like focus on the things that you like and just repetition. And before you know it, you will see yourself doing things in a certain way in that style. That's where it goes. And like my style has changed quite a bit over time, but there are certain things that, are consistent. Sometimes I'll do something different. Like in January, whenever I painted a painting a day for 31 days, I got tired of doing skulls. I started doing landscapes and UFOs and all kinds of stuff. And people are like, yes, drain dye, landscapes. I could see it. And I'm like, well, to me,
Yeah.
I see my signature on it, but there is a certain aesthetic, a certain way that you do things, do lots of things. Like whenever earlier in the conversation we were talking about production, I think the biggest thing that kind of slows down the process is this impulse to make everything perfect whenever you're just starting out, because you really can't make it perfect at that point. It's more about doing it wrong and then figuring out what changes you want to make and doing it again, and have fun. Like it's about having fun. If you're not having fun, you're doing the wrong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know people get caught up in perfection a lot, and I think it's funny in this time of where AI can create artwork that could be perfect. But one
Yeah,
thing that's going to separate us from the machines is going to be the imperfect art. Like it's got the touch of humanity to it,
yeah.
I
My
think.
kiddos to me like that. Like I want it to be perfect, like AI, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
do it then. Like, you can get it to be perfect eventually, but it's if it feels stressful and it feels not fun, there's probably a better way. That's all I'm saying. I don't want to be critical of anyone, but
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Do you often feel the work because now that you're a full-time artist?
Mhm.
Do you feel the pressure because, and also you're out there in markets, you're seeing people face to face, you're getting an idea and a feel for what people like. Do you often feel the pressure to make stuff that people will like as opposed to what you want to make personally?
Well, it's interesting because I'm kind of just getting started. Earlier in May, I sold a UFO painting. I think I want to make another one. I won't do the same thing, but it'll be like a nice UFO painting. And if I ever got to the point where I didn't want to make a UFO painting, then I wouldn't make one. So I think it's just kind of like listening to your inner voice and going with it. I like painting UFOs. There's spiritually there's something that definitely connects with me about otherworldly intelligence, and it's a deeper part of my work other than just the aesthetic. So in that way, it makes sense. It's like a no-brainer for me to do another UFO painting, but I think that if you keep going and you keep being curious and keep trying different things, then you're always going to come up with something different. It's easy. You could also just do the same thing over and over. It's really up to you what you want to do. I find that just because I paint, I painted thousands of skulls, some of them look very similar. All of them are identifiable as mine, but they're not all about the same thing, even though they're all skulls. And you know, I'm not tired of it yet. I'm not done with it. I'm going to, there's things that I haven't explored yet. So I'm going to keep going until I am.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing between because I've been in both camps. Well, I'm not a full-time artist because I don't make any money, but I can see the point of views of like some people who work a full-time job. They've got the security, they've got the pensions, they've got the in Australia it's a superannuation, and you've got that insurance into the future, and people like that and the security of that, and because then that gives them, they can make what they want, and if it doesn't sell, it doesn't matter. And then there's the full-time artist who has to sell their work to remain a full-time artist. I think there's an interesting balance, and there's also a few things like in terms of, I wonder how, as I get older, like I'm 51 now, and I have no superannuation. I have no safety net. I'm
Right.
flying without a net. And it's like my net is my creativity. And like I'm going, well, I hope by the time I'm, 90 or 100 or whatever, I can still finger paint in my bed or whatever, or on my veranda. What are your thoughts about all of that?
I think it's kind of nuanced, like personally, like I identify as a commercial artist. Like I want to make visually captivating artwork. It's like the baseline of everything that I start and everything I finish is for it to be visually captivating. But it can't just be visually captivating. It also has to be spiritually elevating for me. And so, I think that if you're just kind of making without considering your purpose, then you could definitely get into trouble, financially and otherwise. Because, I see a lot of art that, you think like, how many people are really going to want to hang this in their home? Especially artwork that serves as therapy. Like a lot of therapy is, you deal with dark and haunting subjects. And, if you put that on a canvas and you let that live as a physical object, how many people are going to want to hang that energy in their home? Someone might, but you're sort of shrinking the amount of people that are going to identify with it. And you're also you're drawing into yourself more troubled people, troubled collectors. You know what I mean? Possibly, if
Yeah.
someone is identifying and perpetuating that energy in their lives, that's their
Mm,
journey, but it may not be where you want to eventually be. I
yeah.
think you can give some thought to the positive aspects that art brings to your own life and how you would like your art to impact the people who see it and approach it through positivity and thoughtfulness, then you're going to be much better positioned to sell work.
Mm.
You'll also probably be happier, hopefully.
Ali Sabet was talking a lot about that, like he puts the he's got the love language and he's puts the love kind of into behind his work, and I think that's one of the ways that his work is quite successful was because people pick up on that vibe and they want that vibe in their world. Yeah, so yeah, I kind of see what you're getting at there. That's very, very interesting because sometimes, artists can have troubled minds. I know that. I'm in that boat, and like if you put your dark stuff, it's good to get your dark stuff out, but expect that people might not want to put that dark stuff on their wall, and live with it every day. Very cool. Thank you very much for that, Jason.
Yeah, thank you,
And
Andy.
yeah, it's so cool to have you on. And if you've ever got anything in the future you want to chat about, any shows coming up, any things like that, please feel free to
Okay.
jump back on the podcast. And where's the best place for people to find you online? Would it be your Instagram?
Well, my website is drainedeye.com, and my Instagram and my X and Threads and what else? Facebook. That's all Drained Eye.
Yeah,
TikTok, Drained Eye Official. Somebody got my name over there. YouTube is Drained Eye. But I'm most active probably on Instagram as far as social media. But if you want to check out um, streetwear and sign up for my mailing list and stuff like that, drainedeye.com is a great place to go and check that out.
awesome. Yeah, and I'll have that. I'll have the link for all of that in the YouTube video, and I'll also, in the show notes of the podcast, I'll have that linked as well for everyone watching and listening. Cool. Thank you
Thank,
so much, and have a great day.
thank you. You as well. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Fork in the Road podcast, or watching the Fork in the Road podcast. For those people watching on Patreon, we also have it as a video on Spotify and YouTube. If you like the idea of chatting with artists, talking about how you go from starving to thriving, how you become a successful artist, whatever that means to you, whatever a thriving artist means. If you like this kind of thing, you can support the podcast in many ways. Apart from becoming a Patreon, you can just share it with your friends, or you could leave a review on iTunes. I think iTunes do review. Whoever does reviews, if you look in your podcast channel, if it allows you to do a review, or if you're watching on YouTube, please comment, please like, and I won't be one of those podcasts that go, you got to give a 5-star review. If there's something about the podcast you don't like, let me know. Write it in the comments and see if I can, tweak it a little bit to make it work better for everybody. But yeah, 5-star review would be pretty awesome. But anyway, check you next time.